We are seeing new reports tonight about another possible consequence of the healthcare overhaul. While media outlets continue to dig into the issue of losing your plan or losing your doctor, you can see this cover here from the Cincinnati Enquirer. We are now hearing that you may also be losing your prescription drug coverage, or at least finding it much more expensive. Dr. Scott Gottlieb is a practicing physician and former senior policy advisor to the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. Doctor, good to see you again.
Thanks.
And so why is this a concern about possibly losing or seeing a sharp uptick in the costs under your prescription drug coverage?
Well, there's two issues. One is that the copays on the drugs are very high. So on average, they're about 40% that you're going to have to pay on branded drugs compared to about 25% in the private sector. But the bigger issue is that the formularies, the list of drugs that the plans cover, in many cases aren't very long. And if the drugs aren't covered, then you're on your own. You basically have to pay for it entirely out of pocket. And the money that you spend on those drugs doesn't count against your out-of-pocket limits, and it won't count against your deductible. This could cost patients with special conditions, patients who need special drugs, a lot of money, literally tens of thousands of dollars a year.
I know you referenced a drug that is commonly used to treat multiple sclerosis,
Right.
Copaxone?
Right. This was a plan in North Carolina that I looked at where a lot of specialty drugs, drugs for rheumatoid arthritis, drugs for multiple sclerosis, were not in the formulary, which means that patients would have to pay for those entirely out of pocket on their own. This is very different than what happens right now in commercial insurance. In commercial insurance, if a drug isn't on your formulary, typically there'll be co-insurance, meaning that you'll be responsible for some of the costs, but the plan will pick up some of the costs as well. And it will also count against your out-of-pocket limits and your deductible. In this case, it doesn't count against your out-of-pocket limits or your deductible, so literally the sky's the limit on how much it can cost you. And there's so much variability in these plans that patients are going to have to be very careful what plans they select, because in some formularies it's very tight, not a lot of drugs are covered. In others it's a little bit more generous, but there's a lot of variability and not a lot of information.
You know, we talked last week about how now patients are going to be finding that their doctors are not covered by Obamacare, and that now you're saying that many of the prescription drugs that they liked and were taking are not going to be covered by Obamacare. And in both instances, we talked about how if you go outside of the network, if you try to get the doctor anyway, if you try to get the prescription drugs anyway, you're not going to get a reimbursement along the lines of what you're used to. It sounds like the HMO system that we used to use in this country much more frequently than we do today.
Well, that's what it is, really. It is the old HMO. And the other thing is you can't buy up your benefit. If you spend more money and you buy the so-called platinum plan or the gold plan rather than the bronze plan, in many states you're getting the exact same network and the exact same drug formulary. All you're doing is getting lower copays and deductibles. So buying a platinum plan, you're paying higher premiums. You're effectively prepaying your copayments, but you're not getting a different doctor network. So the idea that you could actually spend more money in a lot of states and get a better benefit, you can't do it. In some states you can, but in a lot of states you can't. The plans are exactly the same.
Oh, that's interesting. So, because we're going to get to this in a little bit later in the show. You're speaking, I think, to Dr. Emanuel's suggestion on Fox News Sunday, Zeke
Right.
Emanuel, that if you like your doctor, you can keep him as long as you're willing to pay more. And your comment here appears to be that's not true either, because even paying more won't get you the doctor. The plan won't allow that.
Right. You can't buy a better network in most of these cases. If you go online, you look at the plans, the network, the doctor network for the bronze plan is the same exact network that's used for the platinum plan. I've done it and I've looked at it. You can go completely out of pocket. If the doctor isn't in your network, you can go see that doctor. But again, there won't be co-insurance.
You can always do that.
Well, there won't be co-insurance and it
right.
won't count against your deductible. So, it'll be tough.
Wow. The hits just keep on coming. Dr. Gottlieb, good to see you. Thank you, sir.
Thanks a lot.